Hello, this is Janet Stanley with the Beauty Balance and Peace online gathering, and I want to welcome you today to my friend and colleague and one of the most inspiring people in my life, Elisha MacMillan.
Wow.
Welcome, Elisha. It's so good to have you here today.
Thank you, Janet. It's wonderful to be able to participate in an event like this and to connect with you and the many beautiful souls who are connected to you.
Thank you. I want to let people know a little bit about you before we start our conversation. So Elisha is a women's embodiment coach, which is something a little new for me. So we'll look forward to hearing about that. She is also a sociologist. She's a filmmaker and an educator. And she's a dance alchemist, which just sounds delicious to me. She's the founder of Dance Medicine. And of course, she is a sister peacemaker. So she's exactly where she needs to be today, we hope. We feel really honored to have you here. I know you've been traveling a lot and you're just getting your land legs back here in Canada.
Yes.
So where to start? I think embodiment women's coach, the notion of the embodied, that's when I think of you, I think of all the ways that you embody so many different medicines and teachings. And maybe we could start there. And I wonder if you might like to give us a taste of what an embodied gesture of maybe peacemaking might be, or embodying peace.
Thank you, Janet. One of the key elements about embodying peace for me is becoming present in my body, and sometimes becoming present is uncomfortable because we have pain in our bodies, or we're uncomfortable with the physical expression of our body, how we look. And so I think I'll just guide us, or I'll invite whoever wants to on the call join me in becoming present to what's happening within us right here and right now. And I will just mention that to me, the body is the only piece of land that we will ever truly own. And it's a gift. To me, the body is a gift to our soul, to our spirit from Mother Earth, from Gaia. And that helps me to shift my perspective so that when I'm becoming present to my body, it feels like I'm also simultaneously becoming present to the earth.
That's beautiful.
And the elements of the earth. So I welcome whoever would like to join in to either close your eyes or just bring your gaze down towards the ground. Taking a moment to notice your breath and how it's dancing your body in this moment without needing to make it different. Maybe on your next inhale, tethering yourself to your breath so that you dive into the softness of your belly as you inhale. And rising up and out as you exhale, like you're underwater, and your buoyancy is just pulling you up out of your belly and up through your throat and out your mouth with the breath. And we'll take 2 more breaths like that, just noticing what we notice, what's moving, what's expanding, what feels heavy. And then scanning your body for a place that could use a little extra care and support in this moment. It could be a place where you've experienced some pain, either physically or emotionally. It could be a place where you've had an injury, or it might be that you slept funny on your pillow last night and you have a bit of a a stiffness from that. So I'll just be silent as we search for that place. And once you've found it, you can place a hand there if it's accessible. And we'll just take 3 breaths, imagining our inhale could travel directly to that place. Exhaling any stuckness or heaviness, perhaps giving it a color, and just imagining you exhale that color. Inhaling chi, life force, love, prana, oxygen, energy to that place. And we'll do another 1 breath round like this, exhaling that color or that feeling that's uncomfortable. And then searching in your body for a place that feels completely open, completely at ease, 100% at peace. And it could be the tips of your eyelashes, the hairs on your earlobes, the backs of your elbows or knees. So just taking a moment to find that place of openness and peace. And when you do, imagining you could send your inhale directly to that place, breathing in, sending oxygen, prana, life force, chi, love, energy there. And imagining with each breath round, that feeling of peace radiates a teeny tiny bit out into the body. We're not trying to make a rapid or huge transformation. We're looking for simple, tiny shifts. So we'll take another couple breaths, breathing into that feeling of peace and letting it radiate out, maybe a microscopic expansion with the next breath. And then we'll just rub our hands together. And you can place your hands on either parts of the body that we worked with or none at all. And just feeling your feet on the ground or feeling the temperature of the air on your skin. One more presencing to this room and gently opening your eyes.
Thank you. That was beautiful. I did feel my shoulders just dropping down a little more. And I loved the breath dancing my body image. That's such a delicious image to have. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So embodiment, dance, drumming, educating youth, filmmaking, you're weaving together a lot of skills and talents and influences. I think of you as ever evolving. Do you want to talk about that journey? And you can start wherever you want in it and just give us a sense of what that's like for you.
I'd love to. I'm a person who has a lot of different passions and interests, and I think there's probably so many listeners who can relate to that. And as I was going into university, I began my path of not walking the trodden road of how things are normally done. And I took a year off to travel before I went to university. And over the years of studying sociology and anthropology, and I ended up moving to Mexico and studying a 3rd year there, and then taking 4 years off, which was very upsetting, I would say, for my family. And I'm sharing this just to share that there didn't seem to be a clear path that I saw, a clear career that combined all of my interests. And so I began from a young age. When I dropped out of university after my third year, I did eventually go back to finish 4 years later, but I dropped out and I started my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And this business was offering movement workshops and small retreats. And it was based on West African drum and dance,
Right.
which had called me quite strongly, and I completely fell in love with it. And I wasn't sure, I kind of felt like the degree in sociology was great for learning researching skills and learning how to present in front of a crowd and being part of activist groups. And it was fun, but I didn't think I would use it.
Mm.
And so when I started my business, I was mostly working with women. And I was also at the same time performing professionally, because I had this career for 6 years touring and performing mostly West African dance, but also some other dances from across the continent professionally. And I thought that was my dream. And I was at the height of my career as a light-skinned person who has West African descent that doesn't show. I was living my dream. I was living what I had hoped for. I was making good money. I was working with artists who I respected and touring and getting to work with other dance companies in places like Ethiopia. And I realized that I wasn't completely happy.
Mm.
And that's when I took a step back to evaluate what was bringing me the most joy in my life. And it wasn't touring in vans, eating kind of crappy food on the road. Not crappy, but food that's hard for my body to digest, let's say. And I realized that what I most loved was teaching my classes and doing this dance work with women. And it had been some years of that by this point. And I realized that what was bringing me the most joy was the way that they were expressing to me that this was changing their life.
Right.
Firstly, making peace with their own bodies. West African dance is not like ballet. There's not a certain way to do it. It's about feeling it.
And so many of us really could do with making peace with our bodies, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when I realized that watching dance work people in different ways and support them in their expansion and growth. People were getting new jobs, changing relationships. I just saw a wealth of opportunity opening up for people that they attributed to our weekly dance classes.
Wow.
So that was really inspiring. And that's when I became, I went to the Coaches Training Institute, which is based in California. And I did a coaching program and then a certification program, which is kind of like a mini master's degree. And it was a few years that I led these businesses separate, because I had started working in the schools with youth. And I had also started coaching, but it wasn't connected to the dancing. So coaching, dancing, and then the youth. So I had these three threads.
Yeah.
And over time, I found the way to weave them together. And dance medicine is the weave of the movement and the coaching. And the coaching is really about hearing the intelligent voice of the earth, of our bodies, and building that relationship with our body as a safe haven, a wise guide, a loyal friend, and an intelligence that can tap into the future, into things that we can't imagine. And it has this deep knowing, which some of us would call like an animal instinct, or some of us would name it as intuition.
Right.
But it's something that is an inexplicable knowing that lives in our body. And I've allowed that to guide me since I was 18. And there's another story around how I came to realize that I could trust this feeling, because I had a car accident. And anyway, I had a feeling not to drive. And that's when I learned to
Mm.
really trust it. And so I guess the final weave with the work with youth is bridging this filmmaker within me that's just emerging,
Yeah.
and bringing the drum and dance and some of the coaching elements as well into the work with youth. So I still have two separate businesses. Rhythm is for Everyone is the business that I work with youth, and I do feel that they weave together nicely, and they're both constantly evolving.
Right.
And that's where I use my skills as a sociologist, doing community building and
Right.
intergenerational work with youth, and also some youth in particularly who experience racism or depression, anxiety, cell phone addiction. So
Yeah.
all the pieces that felt separate at one time are now coming together, and I can see that nothing was wasted.
Mm-hmm. That's something I resonate with very much.
Mm.
For me, it comes under the umbrella of beauty, balance, and peace. But I can feel that and see that, and I've got to witness some of it in you. And it feels so good when we bring all the parts of ourselves together, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Do you want to talk about the film a little bit? What is the title of it?
Sure. The film is called Lessons Learned,
Right.
Bridging the Gap Between Seniors and Youth.
Right.
And this film was born from, well, this story is connected to my tattoo, so I think I'll weave these two
Okay.
things together.
Beautiful. I was going to ask you about the tattoo, so that's perfect.
So maybe I'll just approach the screen a little bit here. I have a lioness.
Mm.
My only tattoo is located front and center.
Mm.
And the story of this tattoo is born from experiencing 2 suicides in 2017. One young man, a very close family friend who I considered a brother,
Mm-hmm.
and another young man, the son of a very dear friend of mine. And that during those months, they happened within months of each other, I went through a very dark time and felt like I had shattered in multiple times, and I was just in pieces, and I didn't know if I could go on. I wasn't about to end my life per se, but I thought if I meditated hard enough, maybe I could stop my heart or eject myself out of my body. It was really just such a painful experience. And I mean, probably everyone on this call has experienced deep grief at one time or another. And I was in the depth of my darkness one day. I was taking a shower and I was literally howling with pain to try and move some of the excruciating sensations that were ripping through my body. And I just had this moment where I heard a voice say, "Make a promise to support the youth and let that be the light that guides you through this dark tunnel."
Mm.
And so it became clear in an instant that I would make a lifelong promise to support youth with cultivating and exploring tools for self-expression and self-awareness and self-discovery, and perhaps support some youth who might be making that decision and perhaps would be able to choose to stay. And so at that time, when I heard that voice, I also saw this white lioness come into mind, and I heard her say that she would walk with me in this commitment, in this lifelong commitment, and that she would be there. And I just wanted to put this promise on a place that I would see it every day. I've made other promises that I haven't kept in my life, and I didn't want to forget this promise. So I put this face of the lioness to remind me, firstly, of my courage to survive and make it through the most challenging time of my life until that point. And also because lioness fiercely protect their cubs. for the most part. And I really resonated with wanting to protect, in a way, the youth from some of the harshness of our society by giving them some tools through the arts to express their pain and their celebration. So from that promise, when I made that promise, it was a matter of 3 weeks when synchronicity led me to a school. I followed my body's magnetism to this school, and I met the head of equity and inclusive education for one of the school boards here, and projects just started clicking and lining up. Like within that 3-week period, I had a very full workload for the next several months. And one of the projects was an intergenerational project in Markham, Ontario, where a high school that's situated about a 10-minute walk from a seniors activity center was willing to create an opportunity during a semester to see what could we do to bridge the gap between these seniors and youth. It's a very multicultural area, and a lot of times when people immigrate to Canada, they're not welcomed to bring their grandparents along. And also, you know, perhaps slightly unique to our country, we have such a relatively small population spread across the whole country, and people move for work. And I grew up living with my grandparents, and it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. And then living on and off in West Africa for years, studying West African drum and dance, it was a way for me to see outside of my home situation how important it was to have that, the grandmothers.
Grandmothers are the pillars of their communities.
Yeah, and the grandfathers, and how they supported the youth. So this film, we tried different tools. One was story sharing, and that was the most effective tool that bridged the gap between the seniors and the youth. And they were both quite skeptical at the beginning of the project. And so the film, without giving away everything, the film follows this journey with personal interviews, and it's 20 minutes long, and I can include the links on my page, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a magical journey that you're describing, and it was one that required it continues to be a path of courage. And I think it's what you're bringing in, or what you're naming for us, is the importance of fierceness in our path as bringing our gifts. And I'm naming it as peacemaking, but there's really a lot of names we could call. We need tenderness for sure, but we also need to be fierce and stand firm in what we know to be true and right and just. And your story embodies that beautifully. So thank you for sharing it.
Thank you, Janet. And it's funny how this ferocity can express in different ways. My fierceness was around committing to be disciplined, to write the federal grants, and to do all the organizational work and the legalities and the media release forms, all the things when you're making a film. That's where I really had to apply this fierce gaze and fierce tracking to make sure I did everything that was required, which was so much. And then the tenderness came with the youth and the seniors, and gently inviting them closer to each other. And the film showcases how they completely fell in love with each other, and they built relationships that live far beyond the project, which is the goal.
I love it. I have 4 grandchildren of my own, and I can't count how many nieces and nephews. So I love the work that touches the youth. They are our future, and they make me get out of bed every morning and do the best I know how to do, with fierceness and tenderness, discipline, all that grown-up stuff that, it's not easy, is it? But it is so important.
It's so important. And one other thing I'll share about the film that's important is that it's laid out as a framework so that other people can take this model and apply it in their community. We have free resources uploaded, and it's peacemaking in a way of building bridges within the community and within the youth. Some who were really suffering found a new place of peace within themselves through what they learned from the elders and the seniors that they were connecting with. So,
and I would imagine that the seniors, some of them would have been feeling a bit lonely or isolated, and would have gained also in the connection to these vibrantly different but amazing youth. Did you experience that as well?
absolutely. It's kind of heartbreaking. One of the stories that was shared with me, a woman who has 4 children and they all live in Southern Ontario, but they don't live in Markham. You know, they're kind of a few hours away, each of them. And she has all these grandchildren that we have busy lives, and she doesn't see her family very often. Yeah. She has so many children and grandchildren, but she in particular shared that she gained a new granddaughter in this experience. They kind of adopted each other, and to me, that's the dream, to live in communities where we are so connected with those around us, and we don't need to be related by blood, but we sort of magnetically can find each other through these opportunities and have connections that bring us all inspiration and vitality and healing and wellness and creativity and inspiration.
Yes, I agree. I love that. Oh, so community is a big piece, and you co-hosted a bit of a sacred journey recently to Estonia in Finland, and I was very lucky to be a part of that, so I know what it was like to get a taste of that powerful, unified community that has a tradition of singing in peace and freedom. Do you want to share a little bit about how you experienced it personally?
Sure. For those listeners who aren't aware, Estonia gained their independence through nonviolent protest using song. And it took about 3 years, I think, of singing in masses of thousands of people to gain their independence from Russia a few years before the Soviet Union collapsed. So it's really so inspiring and so remarkable that that's the seed that called me and the other 9 women who came with us to experience this singing festival that happens once every 5 years. And my experience, first of all, of being present to a choir of 25,000 singers at the opening was it's beyond words. It moved through my body like a wave of hope that ignited cells that I didn't know I had and opened me in a way that I felt like I was as big as the choir in some sense. Inside of myself, I felt this great expansion and ignition, like it was very igniting for me. And I didn't realize that I had lost a degree of hope, which seems strange with the film and the work I'm doing. I still had hope, but it was quite diminished from maybe earlier in my life when I was a teenager and I thought I could save the whole world by myself. And I had so much hope around that. Yeah. And now I'm older and more experienced, and I know that I just need to listen for my peace, however big or small that is. But I was so filled with hope and inspiration, and then to understand the meaning and the essence of the songs that were sung, and to know that they were singing their love for their land and their land not as a place that they own with a piece of paper that has their signature and the bank's signature on it. Their land in the sense of mother, father. I mean, this title of this singing festival was about loving the land as father. I forget the exact words right now, but loving the land and belonging to the land and being raised by the land and knowing the land and savoring the land and honoring the land through dancing as well as song. And so I think everyone on our trip, Janet, would say that they left feeling inspired at the very least.
At the very least, activated, ignited. And all of the words that you used feel they resonate with me completely and are living within me even still today. So it was a powerful, I had no idea why I was being drawn to go. But I got an immediate yes. And I'm so glad that I did go and that I did get to experience and follow that energy. Yeah. And as igniting and beautiful and amazing and delicious as that was, you stayed on after we came home. We had 10 women got together for 10 days, basically. And then several of the women actually stayed on and kind of went on separate journeys. And yours was to go north to the Arctic. And I'm in love with the Arctic. So I watched that with great joy. Do you want to talk about that part of your trip?
Sure.
It's not just a holiday. It's following the energy of something really important.
Yeah, I ended up in the Arctic in January at the beginning of this year in Finnish Lapland and hiked for 3 weeks in the time of the darkness. The sun was rising for a few hours a day at that point in January, but no higher than above the horizon, so that everything was sunrise, sunset, and the snow was pink and orange, and everything's covered in snow. And I was so enchanted by this experience, and I did fall in love with the Arctic in a way that I knew it would call me back very soon. And so with our decision to go to this singing festival and then to cross over to Helsinki, it was very obvious that now my journey would lead me north. And it was a month, and we ended up driving 4,500 kilometers from Helsinki all across northern Norway, and hiking above the tree line in the tundra and camping and spending days in these vast landscapes that are rock and water and moss and reindeer here and there that you see, and more reindeer antlers than reindeer for us that we would come across, and tiny, tiny little flowers. Like, it's just so hard to gain the energy and the life force for the plants to be able to express. There's tiny little birch trees that are this big, and they're kind of just growing along the ground. And what I've learned from the Arctic is about letting go. My first time in the Arctic, I came home, and within 24 hours, my canine soulmate, I call her, my young dog, died quite unexpectedly. And the Arctic had been preparing me for that in its own way. And then when I went back, it was asking me to let go again and to empty myself of my ideas of who I am and what I'm supposed to do. And so for me, it was a process of continually shedding and emptying my ideas that I may have outgrown, like shedding a skin as a snake and having to let go of attachment to any parts of that skin to be able to fully shed it. And then having experienced shedding that skin, being able to open and fill myself with the beauty of the Arctic, the purity of the air and the water. You can just drink water from any stream or any body of water. And there's this intensity, because it can really hurt you. It can kill you to do what we were doing if it, rained heavily for a few days and then dropped below zero for some days, which can happen there in the summer. And so there's a real sense for me of vulnerability, but also of feeling the spirit of the Arctic, which to me feels so benevolent, even though it's wild and unpredictable. There's such a tenderness there in that harsh environment that I can't describe, but I feel so held. And it's also, I was talking about feeling expanded in the singing festival. I also could feel my energy so large and vast in this empty space. And feel kind of the fullness of my rainbow spectrum of who I am once I've emptied out some of these thoughts and constructs. What is at my core, and feeling my essence, and part of kind of feeling my essence and discovering myself is climbing mountains. I did some really incredible hikes. I say they're incredible because of the views, and the vistas were breathtaking. And I realized there's a part of me that only comes alive and is only nourished when I'm climbing mountains. And it feels like an important part of me that I need. So I'm sort of, we don't really have mountains here in Southern Ontario, but I'm scouting big hills that I can climb just to get that sense of climbing and challenging my body and feeling the accomplishment and the gratitude of the vistas that are available. But also it's just that connection to the land. And some of these trails were seemingly precarious. And so feeling met, and it was so windy, and some of the trails I was on a ridge that was quite narrow and felt like, and with very steep drops on either side, with the wind blowing so hard, I thought, is it possible the wind could blow me over the edge right now? And so feeling met and supported and held by the land with each step, and taking the journey one step at a time, which is, maybe, I know we're moving into wrapping up, and maybe that's the piece about embodiment that I want to share as a closing, is that it's moment to moment, and it is one step at a time. And if you listen to the subtle cues that your body is giving you, you will learn how to follow the energy. I didn't get to my David Abram story.
That's all right. You can share a little bit if you like. We've got about 2 or 3 more minutes if you want to bring it.
I'll share this as an example of letting my body lead and being present with my body. I run my scheduling through the intelligence of my body. So when I was booking my return flight from our trip, Janet, I wanted to come home on the 1st because I had quite a full schedule for August, and my body was an absolute no, and I contract, and there's a very specific feeling that I've learned when I schedule things in the wrong place and time. So August 5th was the time that my body said yes to coming home. So in Estonia, you and I met through another woman on the trip, Martin Lee Mueller, who has written a book called Being Salmon, Being Human. When he asked me early on in the conversation, what do you do? And I was talking about embodiment and also engaging our animal instincts. And I mentioned David Abram, who is like my Oprah. He's an ecologist and a philosopher. And
I love it when you say that. Yeah. He's a beautiful soul. Because of you, I'm reading both of his books right now. So
yes, Becoming Animal and The Spell of the Sensuous, if anyone's curious. And so he said, I'm hosting, David Abram's a good friend of mine, and I'm hosting him in Oslo for this small retreat. Would you like to come? And And like I said, for me, that was like being invited to Oprah's home. Like, what? And so that is how intelligent our body is. And it has led to a beautiful friendship and connection between David and I. And we will be collaborating and offering things together in however it emerges in the future. So it's just beyond logic.
I know when you shared that with me, I thought, wow, and of course. It's like, of course that's going to happen. Of course you're going to meet people on your way. I love how you model for us that when we show up fully and completely and listen to our inner guidance through the body, through whatever other ways it might show up, we give our innate intuition something to respond to. And then we get, it's a dance, isn't it? We get invited to respond, and when we do respond, the next steps become. So I know in my life it's never been like I know exactly where I'm going or what it's going to look like, but I usually can get a glimpse of what's beckoning and where the next step is. And as long as I trust that, model that really beautifully, Elisha. I wish we had more time. I wish we could talk for an hour. I'm sure we could easily do that.
There's so much. And I think what I forgot to mention in the story is that the retreat was in that window of days that I had extended the plane ticket. So that's the piece about the deep listening. Is that we don't need to necessarily know why.
Right.
We can trust that we have a knowing and then follow it. Then the why and the how can emerge.
Right.
And I think that's what you were saying. Yeah.
Trusting and letting go of needing to know all of the answers all of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much for all the work you do for women, for the youth, for every life you touch to bring peace and beauty and balance. Thank you so much, Elisha. We're so grateful to have you share with us today, and so excited to keep following you and seeing what's opening up. For those of you who were tantalized by the images that Elisha was sharing about the vistas, you do post some of those, so there's ways to follow you and get to share a little bit of the journey, isn't there?
Yeah, social media and newsletter, and my website link will be below, so more than happy to share those.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Thank you
so much.
Love and blessings.
Love and blessings to you, and beauty and peace and balance.
Thank you.
Thank you.